Today I'm going to show you my process for making leather bezels to mount cabochons for pendants, conchos, bolo ties, whatever you might come up with. We're going to make a pendant similar to this one today, but we'll be using this soda-like cabochon that I cut in my studio. If you'd like to see what's involved in making cabochons, I'll put a link in the description to a video that I made on the process. Now this stone is what's called a calibrated cabochon, as it's made to a specific size. It measures 22 by 30 millimeters, which is a common size for cabochons, so we can use a pre-made pattern for this project. Now we're going to start with a pattern that I created for this project, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can download a copy of it for free. And here's what you get. Take that file and print it out, and you got 2 copies of the template to use for this project. So we're going to start by taking our scissors. We're not going to use this outer square. We're going to use this inner rectangle. So first thing we're going to do is cut that out. Thing is we're going to take an X-Acto knife, and this has a new number 11 blade in it, so it's really sharp. And I'm going to take a little cutting board and use it instead of my nice one here. I saved my old boards for when they get cut up, and because what happens if your leather's wet and you're working on a board that's got a lot of cut marks in it, you can scar your leather. So when I'm working with wet leather, I try to be on a new board, and when I'm cutting, I'll be on an older one. So we want to cut the inside oval. This outer oval here is the size of our cabochon. That's our 22 by 30. It fits right in there. So we've left ourselves a 2 millimeter width around the outside of the cabochon, and this will hold the cab in place. So we want to cut this inner oval out. And again, accuracy is your friend. There we are. Okay, the next thing on our list of things to do is to cut our leather. Now I've got a strip here that I cut the width of this. It was 60 millimeters. So all we got to do is cut the height. So I just line my template up. Again, accuracy is your friend. And I'll take a little straight edge right along there and make my cut. Alright, so that's one piece. We'll cut the back piece as well. Line this template up, our pattern up as close as we can. Take my little straight edge, line it up, and make our cut. Okay, so there's our two pieces of leather. What we're going to want to do, see which one looks the best. We'll make it the front. I like that piece. Okay, so we're going to take our piece of leather and line up our template, our pattern. And we're going to take our scratch awl, and this, man, I love this scratch awl. This is a Starrett. And I use it for marking leather and also for marking silver when I'm doing silversmithing. But you take your scratch awl and carefully go around our template. Now, I printed this out on 110-pound cardstock, and that's what I suggest you do as well. That's heavy enough that you can use it to mark with. If you print it on like copy paper, you might want to lay it down over top of the leather and take a pencil and trace, but ideally print it on cardstock. And if you don't have a printer that'll do cardstock, take it up to your local print shop. I use FedEx Office, and they can print it out for you. And there you can see our oval. And our next step is to cut this oval out. And again, we're back to our X-Acto knife, and we want to cut very carefully. Keep your blade perpendicular to the surface. You don't want it angled like this or this. Keep it straight up and down. And just follow our oval. And I, just like I did with the paper template, I turn the piece as I'm cutting. I find that works the best. Chads like that. That's okay. You can always come along and clean them up if you need to. And then we're going to take and we'll burnish that edge too when we get to that point. Now, next thing, we're going to turn our little piece of leather upside down. We're going to take a French Scribing. This is an Odin brand. It works really well. I have another one I'd bought. It's I've actually bought a few over the years, but the Tandy one, I used to have a Tandy one that worked very well, and then I bought a new one and it wasn't worth crap. So I tried this Odin brand, and it works really well. And as you'll notice, there's two little sleds on the outer edges. And if you'll put that little sled edge right along our oval, inside of our oval, and keep it there as you go around. And we're holding about a 15-degree angle maybe. You want to cut about 3/16 of an inch, skive about 3/16 of an inch all the way around. And this will thin out that leather where it sets along the cabochon, make it look nicer. And you might need to make a couple passes at this if you don't get it all perfect in one pass, and you can always trim it up as you go. That's not too bad. Like I said, if there's edges that or areas that aren't as trimmed as well, you can go back along there, try to clean them up a little bit. What we're trying to do is cut this edge down in here so that it'll sit on our cabochon smoothly. All right, now I'm going to take and case my leather, because this is a wet mold process. So I got an old shop towel here and a spray bottle full of water. We'll wet this. What I do is wet it, let the water seep in a bit, come back, wet it some more, do the back side. And it's pretty damp. We want it good and wet because it'll mold much better if it's good and wet. All right. Now, with our leather wet, we want to have it on a smooth surface so we don't scar it up at all. Now, let's take our cabochon. Now, something we need to do is figure out what's going to be the top of our cabochon and our leather. So, I notice on this stone, there's a little starburst area at the top here. So that's what I'm going to use as the top of the stone. And then for the top of the leather piece, I'm going to put a little arrow so that I can keep these oriented the same at all times. So I'll have the starburst and the red arrow up to the top. Alright, then we take and put our piece of leather over top of our stone, and we get a spoon. Now I got this, I want to say I got this at Hobby Lobby. You can probably get them at Tandy, but it's just a spoon and then a blade, a spade or blade, used for, it's called a modeling tool. And holding the piece of leather in place, we're going to slowly go around the outside, gradually working the leather down. And see, we've got a little hanging chad. We can fix that when it dries. It'll be easier to cut that little piece when it's dry. So I'm just going around the outside edge of the stone, keeping it in place, trying to keep it centered, working it down. Just keep going around the outside, working it down. And you can use this same process for any type of wet molding. I know if I'm wet molding sheaths for knives or holsters, I do this very same process. Once I have a pattern, like the knife itself, or if it's a holster, you have the pistol. actually use you can wrap the pistol in plastic, or they have molds that you can buy for particular models. Alright, that little Chad is bothering me. I'm going to try to cut it wet. He doesn't want to cut. That's okay. I'll get it. Keep my arrow up, my starburst up. Alright, now what I'll do is keep coming back to this every once in a while. Probably I'll check it in 30 minutes, then in a couple of hours maybe. And see as it progressively dries. And I'll go back over around the outside. Little Chad does not want to come off of there. And well, the next process we're going to do is we're going to stamp the outside. But it's too wet to be stamping. So we're going to have to wait and let this dry. And we'll come back to it. Alright, so our piece is starting to dry out. You can see starting to come back to our original color in the corner. It may be a little bit wet, but I think we can work with it. So while that was drying, I took and cut out the second oval, the farthest oval out. That's going to be the outside diameter of our pendant. And I took the X-Acto knife and cut that out just like I did the inside. And we're going to take this and line it up to our piece of leather again. And we're going to scribe our outside pendant with the scribing tool. So we're going to go around just like we did with our inside mark. Scribe along the edge of the template. And I do this in 4 segments so I can hold the template down in that area as I'm scribing. Alright, so that gives us our outside outline. There's something else I want to do. You see I've got these cross intersection lines, and I like to take and just put a little mark right at each one of these, and this will help me line up my stamping when I go to stamp, so I can keep everything symmetrical. Alright, so there we got our outside perimeter of our pendant, and we got our 4 little tick marks to give us orientation. Now, the stamps that I use on this design, or I'm going to use on this design, there's 4 different ones, and I'm not sure where I got all of these. This is a craft tool. It's a little seeded stamp. It's a, what is it, a S632. This is an F916. I think that's a Tandy or craft tool. This is a craft tool V400, and then we've got a little F976, and that's a craft tool as well. And that's the 4 stamps that we're going to be using. And I'm going to start with this V-shaped tool, the F916. We'll put our stone off to the side here. And I'm going to make an impression on all 4 of our orientation lines with the point outward. And I want to leave just a little bit of gap between the line and where I stamp, because we're going to use an edger along there. So that looks pretty good, looks pretty square. Got my small mallet, give it a tap. That looks pretty good. So we're cased pretty right, so it leaves us a good dark impression there. Flip it around. Line it up the best we can. That looks pretty straight. Little mark. Come around to this side. I'm leaving myself maybe not quite an eighth of an inch gap there. Make sure everything's straight. That looks pretty good. Make an impression. Come around here. Line things up. If I line everything up to my lines on my cutting board, it helps me keep things straight too. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now we got those 4 marks made. We can put that tool away. Next, I want to make an impression with this V tool. I'm going to make one in between my 4 impressions that I just made. And I just eyeball this. So I want to make an impression between these 2 marks. Leave myself about an eighth of an inch, or maybe I think I need to go about to the center. Maybe an eighth of an inch or so with my point out. And again, this is just eyeballing. Try to get it evenly spaced between these 2. Not that one. Maybe want to go over this way just a hair. That one. This one. And this one. And again, I'm just eyeballing this best I can. I think I'm going to go back over this one. I don't think I seated it quite well enough. Give it a little extra tap. Okay, so now I got all my segments done there. Now I'm going to take this border tool. I forget what you call those. A leaf liner, maybe? Might be a leaf. No, it's not a leaf liner. Anyway, it's a it's a V400. That's what we'll call it. It must be a veiner, maybe. Okay, so I'm going to put an impression between, and I'm going to make my corner of my mark right there at the corner of this mark and come around. Something like this. Alright. That looks good. Do the same thing here. Same thing here. Just working our way around. Okay, starting to look good. So we got that one. We used our little triangle. Now we got just this cedar, and this is a craft tool 632. We're going to go along the bottom of that veiner, put a seed in the center, and then on either side. Do that for each of our impressions of our veiner. And this leather's still pretty wet, so I don't have to strike very hard. All right, now, that's our design. Now you could do this with any set of stamps. You don't have to use the exact ones I just did. Just remember to keep everything symmetrically. You know, whatever stamp you're going to use in the top and bottom, you know, strike it there, north, south, east, and west, and then split that northwest, southwest, so forth, so on, and just keep intersecting the segments so that you fill the entire oval area. See what it looks like with our stone here. We've got our up arrow and our little starburst here. Oh yeah, that's going to look cool. All right. One other thing I think I'm going to do is I've got a little border tool here that I'm going to use. Just a small border. Something about that. I don't know what that is. It's pretty narrow. We're looking at about 3:30 seconds. Somewhere in that neighborhood, 3:30 seconds. So I'm going to go around this real carefully here. Just lightly, I'm just leaving a line, scribing a line basically, that I'm going to come around with the tool without the border guide and deepen. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second, but right now I just want to make my little line. This is just an accent line. You wouldn't even have to do it if you didn't want to. I just feel like, hey, I want to put an accent line on it. That's the beauty of arts and crafts. You can do what you want, man. Coming around carefully. Remember, accuracy is your friend. All right, so I've gone all the way around, made a little impression. I want to take my guide out and go around and deepen this a little bit. Just slowly going around, increasing the depth of my little score line. Just giving me a little accent line that'll grab some of the dye and darken up. Where's our top? There's our top there. Alright, let's see, is there anything else we want to do to this? Yeah, maybe so. Let's take our burnishing tool, go around the inside of this oval a little bit. Burnish that some. Got our arrow up. There's our little starburst. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I usually oil these, and then I'll put some stain on it if I'm going to stain them. A lot of people will go ahead and glue these together and then take a paintbrush and go carefully around that edge to stain it. If you're going to stain it, it's really easier to go ahead and do it at this point because you've got everything apart and you don't have to worry about getting stain or dye on your stone. Another thing I've seen people do, and this works too, is they'll take and center their stone and take and cut the template out. Let me find the template here. Cut this template out where you got this square, and then cut around the 22 by 30 oval, which is the outside oval here, and then lay that on the piece of leather, the back piece, and draw that oval, and then you'll have a pattern where you can set the stone right in the middle of this piece of leather, and you can actually glue it in place, and then you'll glue the back side of this, and once the glue's dried on both sides, you try to line these up carefully and push them together. That works. What I like doing though is I'll take this back piece or the front piece on the back side, and I'll put my stone in and get it exactly where I want it, and then I'll take some painter's tape and anchor this in place, and then I glue over top of that, and then it stays in place, and then I don't have to be so careful about putting these together because it's glued in already and it's easy to match it up. But first, let's take an oil and stain these pieces. Alright, I'm set up here and I've got my two pieces of leather, a small piece of sheep's wool, and a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of a cup, along with a synthetic paintbrush. What we're going to do is apply a real light coat of this olive oil to the leather, and I just take and dip it in the olive oil and then use my sheep's wool to get off the excess, because I don't want a lot of oil when I do this. I just go around lightly. You have to get down in the crevices of your stamping. And like I say, you don't want to put a lot of oil on it. If you need to put another coat, that's fine. It'll look blotchy at first, but you want to use light coats, multiple light coats, rather than dousing it in oil, in a lot of oil. All right. And I'm not trying to get out along the edges real well, because I know I'm only going to go to that cut line or that score line. All right, there's one side. This is our back piece. Like I said, it'll look splotchy here in the beginning, but as it soaks in, it'll even out some, and if you need to, you can go back over it in areas and darken it or get it more consistent. So, but for right now, that's our first coat. We're going to let that dry. All right, that's been about, I don't know, 30 minutes. So I'm going to go in, give it a quick second coat. Something along those lines. There again, I'm not so worried about this outside edge because we're going to cut that off. All right. So that looks a little bit splotchy, but it'll come out. It'll even out. Let's go over this again. All right. We'll let that dry overnight. See what it looks like tomorrow. So our leather is dried overnight. It looks pretty good. And I've decided I'm not going to dye this particular piece. I kind of not like this natural look. And in order to expedite this video also, I want to show you how to put these two pieces together, how to glue them up. Here's what it would look like if we were to dye it. And at this point, what I'm going to do is put a coat of super sheen, it's a leather finish, onto this piece to protect it. I'd also do the same thing if I was going to dye it like this. I would put a coat of super sheen as a masking agent, and then I would use a antique finish over top of the masking area, and that would leave dye into the grooves and indentions of the stamping. So, and that's what was done with this. The back I left natural, like I'm going to do with this particular one too. So anyway, that's that. So let's put a little bit of super sheen on this one. And I just I shook this up to start with, and I take a damp sponge, put a little bit of the super sheen on it like that, and then just rub it in. Pretty simple. I don't like to get a lot of buildup in the grooves and stuff, so if it puddles in there, I just brush it out with the sponge. You can see like a little puddle there. All right. Get a little bit more on my sponge. Do the back side here. And this doesn't take very long to dry, maybe 15-20 minutes. And you can put multiple coats on if you want. I'll probably just put one, and then at a later point, if I need some, I can always paint some more onto it. But for now, I think that'll do. All right, let's let that dry, and I'll come back and show you the next step. All right, so our super sheen has dried, and we're ready to mount our stone into our leather bezel for gluing up. So we got the top mark here, we got our little starburst pattern at the top here. So what we want to do is take some painter's tape, and I've cut a couple pieces the right size, and I get my stone centered where I want it and put the tape, try to center it as well. Actually, it's probably easier if I take the tape and put it in the center, about like that. Then I put a piece crosswise. Like I said, these are cut to about the right size so that they don't overlap the edge of the bezel. I'll put my piece across here, something like that. All right, and I got my starburst there at the top, so I center this, get my stone right in the center, and then I press down my tape. Look at it from this side, looks good. And I made this little wooden piece that I use when I'm doing this to lay my my stone and tape on, so that when I lay it flat on the table, it doesn't push the stone out. All right, so now, because this, I use Wellwood contact cement to glue these two pieces together. Because it smells so bad, I'm going to take this out to the garage to finish this up. So next time I see you, I'll be in the garage. All right, so I got my contact cement here, the original, and it works great for gluing leather pieces together. There's some that's not as bad smell-wise, but I'm not sure if it works as good. And what I do, I've got both these pieces flesh side up, and I use Q-tips to apply my glue. They work really good. They're disposable, and I ran across this one day and I went, wow, this works really good. And I've been using them ever since. Now, if you're wondering how this tape's going to work, I have experimented trying to take one of these apart after I've glued it up, and it was not easy. So this works well. Take my word for it works well. And what we're going to do is apply a good coat to the entire back side of this, and then we're going to let it set for about 15 minutes before we put these two pieces together. Okay, there's that one. Yeah, I got tired of trying to use paint brushes to spread glue. That was too expensive. I tried using paper towels, all kinds of ways to apply glue to leather, and the Q-tip has turned out to be the best approach for me. Now I'm shooting this out in the garage, like I told you, and I'm shooting it with the GoPro, so I don't know how the sound's going to be. It might not match the other sound from the Sony camera, but I wanted you to see how I spread glue. Be careful, there's a little dab there. I don't want to get that on the front of my pieces. Alright, so we're going to let that dry, and 15 minutes we'll come back and I'll show you how I match these up. Alright, we're back. It's been about 10-15 minutes. The glue's pretty much dry. Now, here's the tricky part, is lining these up. And this is really why I like using the tape method, because it doesn't have to be as accurate. If you attach the stone to the back and then try to lay the front over top of it, man, it's got to match exactly, or you're going to have a mess. So let me see if I can do this on the camera. See, that's not that hard to do right there. I got a pretty good match. That would have worked either way. If I could have lined it up that accurate, it would have been fine. Okay, now I take a plastic headed hammer, and go around this outside. Tapping it down to make that contact cement adhere. Take my hands and press down on the stone and the backing. Make sure everything's in good contact. All right, so there we go. Let's head back into the house. We'll trim around the outside. All right, we're back inside in the studio. And the next step is to cut our pendant out. We've got our outline that we made originally, the outside of our pendant, when we were using our little template. So we're going to follow those lines. And I'm going to use a different knife now. I'm going to go to my Stanley number 199. And I've done a video on this knife, because I call this the greatest knife in the world. It's a fixed blade, sharp as it can possibly be. And I'll show you how to sharpen it. I'll post a link to a video on this knife and see how I can go about sharpening it. And I'm going to show you how to use it right here now. So we're going to start at the top, and I'm going to work in. Again, I'm keeping my knife perpendicular. I'm going to slowly work into my guideline and slowly go around the outside edge here. Remember my favorite saying, accuracy is your friend. Okay, I hope I didn't have my head too far into the camera there. I had to get over to see. Then I'll just go along here, any imperfections, trim these off. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, the next thing I want to do is take a little piece of sandpaper. This is 400 grit. And we'll go around the outside, smooth things out a little bit. I'm not going to do a lot. I'm not trying to round it over. I'm just trying to get a straight, flat edge that I can run my edger on. So now, we need an edger. That's a 5. We want a number 2. There's a 3. That'll work. And we're just going to go around the edge at about a 45-degree angle. And this is where I said, like, those little marks that we made, our orientation marks, when we come around with our edger, we'll get rid of those. Come on out. Like that one right there that we just got rid of. And of course we'll also go back over this with more sandpaper. Make sure we got all those edges rounded over. And let's use our little scrap piece here to hold us off the stone. I had my little wood block that I was using. I don't know where it disappeared to. I think it's out in the garage. This will work. Probably should have sharpened this edger before I started this. All my sharpening strops are at my old desk. I just set this little portable tooling station up, moved all my tooling stuff out here to a little cart that I can film at. And I haven't got it quite set up exactly the way it needs to be. This is the first video I've made here, so we're going through the process, trying to figure out. Alright, now what I'm going to do at this point, get rid of this. And in case you're wondering, this cutting board sits on top of a piece of granite, 4-inch thick granite that I got. There's a broken gravestone, and they wanted to get rid of it really bad. They gave it to me, so said I could have as much of it as I wanted. So that's something to do. If you're looking for a good block to stamp on, check out your local cemetery. All right, so I'm going to take some water. And a dauber. Go around the outside here. That's a new dauber. Just wet the outside edge. Of my leather. And this is my typical process for edging. A water helps lay down the fibers of the leather. And the next step will be to sand it. And the water will help with that. All right. I'll take the sandpaper. All the way around the outside, round over the edges. And this will start the burnishing process as well. And once I've got this sanded and smooth, I'll go back over it with some more olive oil too, so that it matches the face and the backing where we put a coat of oil on it. Now, depending on how much time you want to put into edging, you can start out with, this is 400 grit. You can start out with something a little bit heavier, maybe some 320, and then move to the 400, and then if you really want to get it polished up, you can go to a 600 grit. But for this piece, I think a piece of using just the 400 grit will work fine. See how that edge starts to burnish up. Alright, I'm not going to bore you to death with this polishing process, the edging process. I'm going to make a video here shortly going over how I do my edges. So you'll be able to go back and look at that at some point here in the future. But that's basically our pendant. Now the only thing left to do would be to take a little awl and punch a hole in the top where we'd put our pinch bail. And you can buy pinch bails like this. And like I say, you just punch a little hole and then you clamp this pinch bail down. I make these little pinch bails myself, but you can buy them on Etsy, and then you run your necklace through that bail. Anyway, the only other thing I would do once this dried some, I'd hit it with a little bit of saddle soap, maybe some more oil, and then I take a piece of canvas cloth, and go over it, rub it real good, trying to get a burnished edge. You can see that shining right up. Like I said, you could put some oil on it at some point if you wanted to. Anyway, check back because I am going to make a video on edging. I'm just going to go over this real quick, give you the basics. You can also use your burnishing tool around the edge. Depending on how slick you want to get this. Or you could paint the edges, dye the edges, lots of stuff you can do. Like I said, I'll be making a video soon going over all those different processes that you can use to make these, to slick these edges. Alright, that's the basic idea right there. If you enjoyed this video, how about take a second, hit that like button, subscribe so you'll be notified when new videos come out. And as always, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.